My name is Rochelle Grayson, and I'm the president of Elastic Entertainment. We are a entertainment content provider for the web and mobile. And today we're going to talk a little bit about personalized video. The title specifically is Personalized Video Media, ITV, Broadband, Podcasting and Blogs, Advertising and Content. And that's a real mouthful, so we really have a broad topic here. Fortunately, we also have, it seems, sort of everyone represented from the beginning delivery, discovery, as well as the content creators. So it should be an interesting discussion this afternoon. We are not doing any PowerPoint presentations. It's after lunch. I know it's the last day. Thank you for still being here. And we really want to make this as interactive as possible and actually fun. So I encourage you guys to ask questions. I'll look around throughout the process and just raise your hand and let's have a dialogue. But before we get started, I'd like for each of our esteemed guests this afternoon to introduce themselves and tell me a little bit about who they are and the organization they work for. So if we start at my right, why don't we start with Mihai, now here we go, Krasneanu.
Wow, you got it right.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you. So I'm the founder and CEO of Gloria. It's a French-based company, and we are the largest video-on-demand service in France, and rolling out across Europe right now. The thing is that we're coming from the online DVD rental, basically with the French and German Netflix there. So we have already 4 years of activity in that field. So we're coming from the distribution side of the content, and now moving on video-on-demand across Europe.
I'm Darren Gill, I'm with ChoiceStream, and we provide personalization solutions for a lot of the top media companies and portals. We've been working with AOL for about 3 years now, providing personalized TV recommendations, movie recommendations, music. I think there are about 15 apps that use our software, as well as Yahoo Movies. In the digital delivery space, like Gloria, in the States we work with Blockbuster Online, MovieLink, Akimbo. It's all really about delivering relevance to each consumer on a one-to-one basis. So we're helping businesses figure out how to do it and do it in real time and do it across as many platforms as possible. So we've been very active also with customers we can't announce yet, but in the cable and MSO space for going across those 3 screens.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Andrea Mitchell, founder and chief creative officer. I have my chief CEO next to me. We're with a company called Podcast Go. We've initially taken the idea of cable television and are pushing it out to your computer, but more importantly, your mobile device. We are short format. We are personalized video to give the consumers a specific, very special anything that they want to deal with in their special interest format, whether it's travel, fashion, health related. And we also give specific notation to tech support at the end. So we basically are Sesame Street for adults, which is kind of my favorite. We provide audio, visual, and text. It gives people who have a hard time understanding or maybe who cannot read so well and absorb information. This is another outlet for people to absorb information.
Stephen Hearn with Podcast Go, I'm the president and CEO. And I think Andrea aptly gave a description of what we are and who we are, so I'll let it go.
All right, hello, my name is Chris Hawk. I'm a group product manager for Adobe Systems Inc. And Adobe, of course, you might be familiar with by its products such as Premiere, After Effects, and of course with the acquisition of Macromedia, the Flash product line. Adobe is a provider of end-to-end solutions and products for digital media creation and delivery. My particular focus is on that delivery portion, in particular with Flash Media and our products and our services for creating and delivering Flash Media experiences.
Great. So before we get started, I thought the first thing we should probably discuss is how do each of us define personalized video? I think that we're going to be using this term this afternoon, and each of us is looking at it, I think, from a slightly different perspective. So, Chris, why don't I start with you? And how do you and how does Adobe, or how do they see personalized video, and what role do they see them playing in that space?
Sure. Well, there's we look at the market as a couple of phenomena. First of all, enabling our customers, which happen to be, at least in the digital media space, large media and entertainment customers, enterprises, advertisers and agencies, as well as telcos and MSOs, helping those companies deliver what we call professional media, or their studio-created content, and getting it up and out and distributed and monetized in a customized fashion. But we also have, with our Flash platform, really a way to help these same media and entertainment customers, as well as startups, to create what we call social media. And social media is, a term that we've used for these new sorts of Web 2.0 applications around video blogging, podcasting, webcasting, and so forth, that really enable viewers to create their own content, and then also take their interactivity and add it to professional media to create mashups. So in a lot of ways, the term personal media, as it might apply to user-generated content and so forth, is we believe a lot of a social aspect for a lot of the reasons people watch TV, like a program like Lost or Entourage, is so you could talk about it over the water cooler or with friends, and it's a very social nature. So we look at our mission as enabling both that products and solutions for creating and delivering professional media as well as social media.
Great. Stephen or Andrea?
I'm going to let Stephen handle it, then I'll jump in.
Well, I think from Podcast Go's perspective, the personalized, experience really boils down, for us anyway, of really bringing people more of a personalized experience of what and when they want something. Right now, of course, the personalized video is exploding in the MySpace and the YouTube type atmospheres. What we're doing from a personalized perspective is really bring more of a programming experience to the personalized experience. So whereas we're so enthralled, especially as Americans, to the television and the programming on television, we're more about bringing that programming, combining it to the personalized experience to give people kind of what they're looking for. We're so used to television, we're so used to Cablevision, so now we want to bring that personalization that the Adobes of the world are helping to create and make it accessible in a more organized fashion, in a clean, sophisticated space.
Okay, great.
No, I agree.
Okay, no. Darren?
We think of personal video as really about relevance. We think that's what's interesting about the time we're in now, where I think TV is going to become, as a concept, it's shifting quickly into video. So the content's available on all these different devices and platforms, and the programming that's on your television at home can also be viewed online more and more. So what's interesting is that the preferences for the content we've found stay fairly constant. They'll evolve over time, but you can figure out what a user prefers. And what we try to do is figure out ways in which we can push the content to the user in whatever context they're in, and the content that each one would want. So similar to what you're saying on Podcast Go. And a lot of the content in the entertainment space is very interesting because it's sort of ubiquitous across the platforms. So the movie, from a preference standpoint, it's the movie that you're interested in, whether it's a trailer, you saw it at the theater, you're going to watch it online, or you're going to see it on demand on your TV. So we try and work on that sort of data reduction to understand about what are the actual elements that are out there and use it in an efficient way to push it back. So for us, personal media is really about getting what you want pushed to you when you want it and where you want it.
And Mihai, how do you view personalized video?
Well, we're coming from a 4 years long experience in the DVD rental service. So there's a big problem there, which is that when you're offering almost all the DVDs available in the market for rental, you realize that choice kills choice, and nobody knows what they can see at a particular moment. And a lot of unsubscriptions, cancellations, were motivated by the lack of choice. People will say, yeah, I already seen whatever I'm interested in, and it's over. I can't find anything else. Which is absolutely impossible because everything is out there. So that's our first observation, which is people have to have some tools to help them, first of all, realize what they might like or not, and then try to make them discover new things. So that's the first thing. It's about recorded media. The other thing is about TV channels. I've heard that the new service of AT&T, ADSL, will be one of the biggest in the world because they will offer almost 1,000 channels. And that's a real breakthrough, because that means that if you spend 3 seconds changing the channels, you're going to spend 1 whole hour going all through the 1,000 channels. So that's maybe a nice way to spend your evening, but I don't think everybody will do that. So I think that people now want to go back to the 30s, I would say, or the 40s, where they had only one single channel. One channel, a super channel, their own channel, with things that are for interest for them, but also things that they might discover. So, and that's for broadcast. So the work we're doing in our field for video on demand now is really trying to understand, as you were saying, the patterns and the behaviors of people, and helping them out, not only with what they want to say, to see, and but also to discover new things. And maybe we can get into that, but that's sort of the concept of the long tail we're living every day.
Great. I have a quick question for the audience. How many of you actually own a TiVo or a PVR? Okay. And how many of you have ever downloaded a video or a video podcast off the web? Okay, now the quick question. How many of you have actually downloaded video for your phone? Interesting. Okay. Unfortunately, today we don't have anyone from mobile, and I think that that really is a shame, because that is probably the ultimate personal appliance these days that everyone has on them. So we won't be speaking to that, but I'm just curious to see what that looked like. To get back to your point, Mihai, I definitely heard a trend on the wherever, whenever, whatever, and high relevancy to what I want. In terms of, and I like to call it contextual video. We talk about contextual ads, but it's really contextual video, getting what I want and making sure it fits my mood, my time, my place, my device. On the discovery, and I would even argue rediscovery, I don't know how many times I've seen something on YouTube, thought it was really funny, then I went and I couldn't find it again. And I had to either go back to my email or I had to do something. So even in the places that supposedly aggregate and have tagging and a variety of things, discoverability is hard even when you really think you know what you want. So I would like for Mihai, and actually I'd also like maybe Chris, for you to talk about, and Podcast Go as well. You guys have chosen a slightly different way of promoting and making that easier. What are your thoughts on discoverability and sort of those issues from a consumer's perspective as to how do I discover what I want?
Do you want me to take this?
Why don't you start?
Because I am a consumer. I don't work for a big corporation. You're looking at the corporation. And Podcast Go was basically built on exactly that. I go to the web all the time, and I'm frustrated with where did that go? Exactly to your point, Rochelle. Where is that? Where'd that go? Or just move on, just forget it. Podcast Go, our platform, and I think Stephen will agree, is so simplistic with where everything is and how it's organized. And I can let Stephen kind of discuss really how we're specifically organized through a technology base. But for a consumer, I think it's so simplistic. When I say a test, we weren't doing hundreds and hundreds of hours on Test Market. We went to a nursing home and did, where my grandmother was, and had her friends playing around the computer, from everyone from 88-year-olds into my 4-year-old niece, and everyone had an easy time, not only navigating, but coming back to where the video that they wanted. So that was a huge help, but Stephen might be able to explain a little bit better.
Well, I think one of the big challenges that we have around this, especially, addressability, is one portion, is you want to make sure that consumers are always taken care of. Because they're going to drive, am I getting this content? Do I want this content? And how easy is it? Then you have the other side of it is you got to monetize it in some way. So the addressability factors and the ease factor are huge. One of the things that we do with Podcast Go, just as you had mentioned earlier, where did it go? So what we've done is we tried to build an architecture where once the consumer has said, this is what I want, then we've remembered what they want and make it easy for all of their devices. So when you talk about mobility, when someone comes in our network, they just let us know what devices they have. I want this content on my desktop. I want it on my Verizon VCast phone. I want it on my Sony PSP. I want it on my iPod. So we wanted to make it easy and clean and let us remember what it is they wanted us to remember. At the same time, we also wanted the large advertisers of the world, from a financial perspective, to be able to understand this as well. So we brought the addressability to it. So it's kind of understanding the who, what, when, where, and why. Where are they, and what do they want in Marietta, Georgia versus San Jose, California? And if we do it the right way, that's a good thing for the consumer, and it's a good thing for the advertisers, because now we've married all those things together and no one has to sacrifice. Because we want everyone to have this content the way that they want it and where they want it, and when it's appropriate, the advertisers can follow. Where it's not appropriate, they won't. And that's kind of a perfect world, hopefully.
Chris, I see you're shaking your head there a lot, so...
Yeah, I would say that from a platform point of view, as a provider of platform tools for digital media delivery, one of the obviously important things of discovery is that you have to be able to view the video, right? So if you're on a Mac and you can't see that video, that would be a problem or hampering discovery, or you're using Safari or Firefox or not the right browser and you can't see the video, that would be an issue. So, what we look to do is provide a platform that is cross-functional, that enables publishers of media content to reach the widest possible audience. And we believe that is one aspect that helps discoverability. Then the second thing is really we provide partners to really customize those sort of media experiences. So if a solution provider or media and entertainment customer wanted to have a great graphical, real-time altering experience for delivering media clips or choices to the end user based on search terms, we have tools and UI that provide that really rich experience. And then lastly, if a publisher wants to use more of a social kind of context and the blending of maybe real-time communications with media to help people together to identify clips or their entertainment, or maybe even comments on top of a particular clip, like someone like a Click TV is doing. We provide the underlying fundamental technology to enable our partners and media and entertainment companies to build in that sort of discoverability, and that's all fundamental to our platform.
Now, both of you have talked a little bit about architecture, Steve, and then Chris, you're talking about the sort of the technology. Miha, I'd like for you to speak maybe a little bit to the behavioral side of discovery, and what have you found in your dealings about, what are the issues there, sort of on a behavioral side from a customer's perspective that you think are interesting or important to keep in mind?
Well, I hope all of you have started to read or maybe finished the Chris Anderson book about long tail. We live really in a long tail world, and on the DVD rental side, what we discovered is that again, something like around 95% of all the titles we have are rented every month, what people might rent is absolutely a chaos, I would say, because it's not about recommending a Pasolini movie to someone who watched a Fellini movie, not about recommending the Inis of the world. It's just that you realize that someone who watched this Pasolini movie also watched a documentary about traveling in Zimbabwe, and you don't know why. And it's not because someone else also watched the same documentary that you could recommend also a small animation for their kids, because that person might not have kids. So there are some limitations in whatever the automatic tools can do. So then you come to realize that you have to really work with real people to understand how people behave and what kind of content you could push forward for them to discover. And then you start creating niches, and for each niche you start creating special interest groups where everybody starts discovering whatever other people have discovered as well. So you let the community discover by themselves the behavior of other people and trying to identify themselves with those people. Now, I think that the big challenge for the VOD side is that definitely there is a huge market for the PC VOD or the mobile VOD or the VOD to go. But still, entertainment happens in the living room, and that's where everybody wants to go. And the problem is that the on-demand entertainment in the living room, it's really much more difficult to have for, first of all, technical reasons, because you really need to have a big broadband. And then about interfaces and usability, what you can do with a mouse and a keyboard, you cannot do it with a remote control. So this is the challenge we're facing right now, because we're launching in October our VOD service for the TV ADSL set-top boxes. You know that those are very popular in Europe, and especially in France, where you have almost a 20 megabits access, free phone calls, and 200 television channels for $30 a month. So those are really high bandwidth networks. So our challenge now is to develop the interfaces for those set-top boxes for the second largest telco in France, to see how can we offer people this discoverability capacity with a remote control. And that's a real challenge, not only from a technological point of view, but especially from a user interface point of view.
Hi.
Yeah, that's you shaking. You go right on it.
Well, yeah, a few things. I think the point you made originally, Mihai, about that people having trouble even making choices, too many choices online where there is a rich interface. And we all have heard all the discussions and seen the explosion of search. But what you find with entertainment content, and I think it goes back to your point about the living room, people with entertainment, search isn't really a very effective tool. It's hard to search using a typical search box to find something interesting to watch. There aren't really the words that help you. I want to watch something good. I'm looking for something funny. That doesn't necessarily return the results you want. So push is really important, what we found. And I think companies like Netflix in the United States, I think they have attributed 60% of their rentals to recommendations, which would be some form of an engine pushing back content to the user. So we work with Blockbuster Online, and on their site we're pushing almost all aspects of the site. So if you looked in action adventure, instead of sorting it alphabetically or by release date, it would be sorted based on some preference to you. So you would likely get action adventure movies that would be more inclined to your taste, as well as going through recommendations. So it's sort of the soft form of doing it, but pushing it. But when you get into the user interface of the set-top box, like you're saying, it gets really difficult. And unfortunately, it's as though in the set-top box UI design, they haven't even taken the clues we've learned from online. So if you think about how many dead ends you can go through on a set-top box, I mean, you hit guide, and you get about 16 choices. They have all these categories. Some of them don't even make sense to you. So you click on demand, and you see edgy, new. And you're trying to figure out what's there, but then if you even go to the effort of figuring it out, you go 3 clicks in and you see 4 titles. And then you have to figure out which button is back. And you know, in 1999 we talked about that online, like dead ends, remove the dead ends, provide other content at the end of that road so they can keep walking. And so some of those things are coming into set-top boxes and mobile phones, and that's a challenge, but you've sort of seen that pattern where they lay out the hierarchy and the taxonomy, and it's harder to go through it. And you're just expecting, I think the consumer expects more after the time we've had growing up online, so to speak. So I think the approach there is to really push, figure out everything we've learned online. Community can be a big help. I think it's going to be exciting in a living room situation if you could have clues as to what other people are watching or have set for season passes that are similar to you, and take the clues of what you're doing online when you're looking for entertainment content or downloading content to help your set-top box experience. So when you hit guide, why go through the channels 2, 3, 4, 6 to get to HBO at 301 or, you know, soccer channel at 275? Go ahead and stack it by relevance. It's all digital for most people anyway, so it should be, if HBO you watch a lot, or if the show that's good there, it should be right at the top, and then the sports right below it. So take those clues from wherever you can get it, but you'll need some engine in the back end that sort of stores the profile and says, yep, this household's online, they're doing this in the living room, and now when they click it, they get more relevance at every screen.
Yeah. So I'm hearing sort of that it's a combination of maybe social networking filters, technology filters. And we haven't really spoken all that much, and Andrea or Stephen, I'd love for you to address this one maybe in particular. What about the editor, the experts, the programmers? I mean, you started out saying you are programming content, so to a certain extent you are yet another filter, and you feel you are finding the best in some of these categories, or what's appropriate. Is that a really important role that you envision will still need to happen, or is it enough just to have my friends and the technology, or the technology get me 80% of the way, my friends get that other 20% until I'm really happy with the results, or tell me a little bit about your approach and why you chose to go that way. Yeah.
Well, Andrea might have another answer also, but I think one of the things that it may get back to in a real rudimentary way is really short format. I mean, we're using this word, it may be podcast, we're using mobile, and a lot of this, I think, is going to be more and more part of everyone's genetic structure of a short format. Several months ago, I was at the Symphony, and used to you would see children, at the Symphony, and they're fidgeting, because it's a couple of hours long.
I fidget.
But now you'll notice the next time you go to any sort of event like this, just watch for a few minutes. Even adults, 18, 20, 30-year-olds, that start to fidget within the first 30 minutes of some sort of performance or production. Now, whether it's right or wrong is really a different thing. It's more of how are we going to offer these things to people from a programming, architectural perspective. And for us, I think, it really gets back to short format, purposeful, what we call purposeful infotainment. It's information, it's entertaining. For us, optimally for our consumers, the 2 to 4 minute, 6 minute components is speaking to the consumer. Whether or not that means that they won't watch a 2-hour video, obviously they will. I mean, those numbers are still there. But over time, it seems like we want to see the climaxes of everything fairly quickly, and I think that's going to probably increase over time. We want to see the aria, not the downtime. We want to see the touchdown, not the 4 hours it takes to get to the touchdown. So one of the things that we're focused on from a programming perspective and the consumer perspective is a short format. We want to we want to provide information, make it entertaining, hit the audio, the visual, and the text components, and bringing that into a programming experience. And genetically, I think that's going to, we think as a corporation, as an organization, philosophically, that's going to continue to move forward. And it doesn't mean that everyone will just abandon long format by any means, but the popularity and the need, especially as the children are growing and growing and growing, each generation is different of what is capturing them. And that's what I think that we have to speak upon.
Okay, great. So I've now found that video, that evasive video, and I've gone somewhere to look at it. I'd like for several of you to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of download versus streaming video. So, how do you feel about that? What are the pros? What have you seen? I think some of you are, obviously, let me start with Chris, because I think you might have a pretty interesting perspective on it. I know, Adobe doesn't probably have a very strong stance on anything, but,
ultimately as a provider of technology, we want to enable both ways of viewing the content, whether it's a streaming or kind of a pseudo-streaming progressive download or a download to own. I think there's different sorts of content that fit the bill. If you have a piece of music that me personally as a music consumer, I want to keep on my hard disk and I want to keep around, that's going to be something that I'll download to own. But maybe a short on YouTube or a movie, I might not want to have ownership of that, and I'll just watch it and go away. I think we're going to see both coexist. I think the same is said for entertainment too. I think we're both going to see long form and short form coexist. It's not going to be one wins over the other one.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Darren?
I think you're going to see a rise of streaming. I mean, obviously, we've seen more and more of it. I think the broadband penetration, I think all the discussion about Wi-Fi, WiMAX, you're going to see more of it. I think also, if you look historically at what television has done as an industry, I mean, it's basically a streaming format, broadcast, it aggregated an audience. I think that the advertising side of that, which is what built that whole industry, will be behind the streaming movement. But I think right now, almost all the streaming is on a PC. And my feeling about the short form aspect of it is that a lot of the PC time you have is dominated with a whole bunch of other things you could be doing at that time. And I think the short form works really well for the distraction, for the look at it now. It's not a commitment. So the commitment you do to a 2-hour movie. Just the other day, which didn't get any press, which I was sort of surprised by, on Comcast.net, I saw the Weeds premiere. Does anybody out here watch Weeds on
Live for the
Showtime?
Weeds, live.
It's great. And so several of us in the office knew that the premiere was on the 14th, Monday night. And the whole first season is on iTunes. A little plug for iTunes if you want to get it. And I know people who've watched the whole season on a video iPod, which I didn't think anybody would do. But anyways, I'm looking on Comcast.net, and they streamed the whole episode. So it's premium content. You have to have a Showtime, at home. You'd have to pay for Showtime to get it, and they were streaming it for free on Comcast.net. It should have got press in my mind. But there I was watching it all excited. It's like 2 p.m. at the office. And about 5 minutes in, I was like, wait a minute, I want to watch this at home. Like, this is,
Right.
I'm not just going to sit here and watch it right now. So I think that's a little bit of the element that you're going to have to get more devices that stream more. And then, because there still needs to be sort of that personal nature to it. So I think the portable devices that have Wi-Fi connectivity, you're going to just see it grow and grow.
Mihai, what are your thoughts?
I want to tell you about the practical experience we had in France. Really, when we tested our video on demand service, we thought that streaming was great because people had very high bandwidth. So why not doing streaming? And it's convenient. It doesn't take hard disk space and so on. And we started doing it in test mode, and it was absolutely awful because what we were streaming is premium content, meaning 2 hours length movies. And suddenly, you see the nice family popping up, plugging the PC and starting to watch the movie. And after maybe half an hour, 1 hour, the movie starts to pixelate and buffering and stopping. And you have this poor guy in his living room with his wife trying to explain her, yeah, technology is great, but hey, bear with me, it's going to work. And it's over. It's over. I mean, the popcorn will not be finished tonight. So streaming, it's great, but I think it doesn't really work for long formats premium content where quality has to be there because you want to watch it, full screen on your projector, on your nice plasma television. And this is only through the internet, which is not a network that you can control in terms of quality. Now, streaming is different. When you are on the network of the operator. Neuf-Cégetel, this telco in France, has its own network, and they control the quality of the network. So what they do with the set-top boxes, it's pure streaming. And it's much more than that. All the set-top boxes are high definition, and they started doing high-definition streaming, MPEG-4. And it works perfectly because they control their network. Now, for internet use, we switched completely to download. And if the household has a pretty good internet connection, that means that the 1 gig movie will be downloaded in maybe 1 hour or less. If it's a slower connection, it will be downloaded maybe 2 or 3 hours. But it doesn't matter because it's progressive download. So as soon as you buffer enough content, you can start playing the movie while downloading in the background. So if you have high connection, the speedy connection, the movie starts after 30 seconds and continues in the background. So I think it really depends on the distribution mode and on the content. I would have something to add on the very interesting topic you raised about the short formats. I definitely think that today short formats are very, very popular, and they will always be because we've grown in the culture of channel changing, channel switching. For how much? 40 years, 30 years,
Yeah.
right? Since the invention of the remote control, basically. So this is deep into our roots to change channels. And it's so convenient because if you get bored, it doesn't matter, you just change it. It's anywhere 3 minutes content, so if you get bored after 30 seconds, it's okay. Now, if you paid for a movie, you choose the movie and so on, and after half an hour you thought it's a bad movie, what are you going to do? It's a bit difficult. I mean, you're in already. Are you going to stop it? Are you going to choose another movie? Not sure. So, this is also the big problem with premium content, long feature movie.
Thank you. I guess we've talked a bit about content. Now I'm going to get to the money question. This all has to be paid for somehow. I know, finally. I guess the question is, there are a variety of business models. There's subscription, there's pay-per-view, there's ad-supported, and I want to get a sense of what do you think, what are some of the rules, or what are some of the trends that you see happening in that space? Maybe there are certain models for short form, might be for long form it's a different one, so what do you see in your businesses, and what kind of interesting things do you also see? Is there anything that's kind of new and different that you've noticed yet?
Want me to start?
Yeah, why don't you start, Andrew?
Podcast Go, when Stephen and I first were coming together and really figuring this out, we were all about 99 cent, 99 cent, 99 cent, let's do it. And then I was like, well, guys, let's think about this. Again, we're talking, I'm a consumer, and I'm so bloody tired of paying for stuff on the web, especially things that I should know. I mean, I don't know how to cook. I don't know how to really make a cocktail. I can make a great mean bowl of cereal, and I'm pretty limited. But I don't want to buy a cookbook because I don't understand really recipes in that whole world. But Podcast Go, Channel Cook, we decided that free subscription is best right now. We really did study the cable model from 35 years ago. And in my area, I don't know about nationally, but I know in my area, specifically in Lowell, Massachusetts, where I'm from, cable was free. We'd all be riding around in our big wheels, and they'd be putting pipes down into the underground, and they'd be handing out these free cable pamphlets. And I really kind of studied that model because, you went to cable and it was empty channel, empty channel, empty channel. Oop, there's something. Podcast Go really kind of really adapted that model, and we hope to remain a free subscription. I personally think it's lame to charge people for information like our health channel. If you get breast cancer, I don't want people to have to pay to figure out how to fix their disease. I think they pay enough through, baloney insurance companies, and a bunch of other bureaucratic companies that are out there. We don't want to be that person or that company. So Stephen can much more elegantly explain our business money-making model, and here he is.
Well, basically in a nutshell, what we do is, again, we moved away from, like you said, in the short format, people are going to get bored and they want to be able to move around. I mean, we developed this architecture on that remote control situation. People go home, boom, 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 boom. We want them to do the same exact thing on Podcast Go, make it easy, keep them entertained, information quick. When they're tired of that one thing, they'll move over to the next thing. And it took a little while. Obviously, YouTube is highly popular. We will say from a monetization perspective, it scares the big advertisers, the American Expresses of the world and Procter & Gamble, because they're not, they can't control that content. So what we have seen a large push over the last 6 months is the big advertisers, the larger sponsors are now a lot more freewheeling to come and say, okay, in our example, we do a lot of like joint venture type components where a domain expert in travel, I won't use specific names, but in travel, in the airline industry, they want to be a part of this, and they want clean, sophisticated, slightly controllable, if you will, environments from that perspective. So of course, in Podcast Go's case, we have some people that pay us to exist on the network. They want to take control of their own programming. That's perfectly okay. Then they just pay us a fee in that particular case. Then of course, we developed this just like Cablevision. It's just like television. If you want to advertise between 7 and 8 for this particular podcast, you can certainly do so. The sponsorship has become really one of the largest components because we've seen where they weren't able to do it in other spaces, in similar venues. Now that cleaner programming has come to the focus, the larger people are really starting to take notice, and they're willing to do it because for them it's another level of television. They're creating commercials for video podcasts, and we also spend a lot of time on addressability. We want to be able to offer people that if they download a video podcast, we know that they're in this state, this county, this city, and if this particular car dealership or car manufacturer wants to point them to a localized experience, they can, and that speaks volumes to the large advertisers. When you talk about addressability, it's huge. And we, luckily, I don't know if we planned it all that way, but sometimes you went out, is we planned the addressability from the very beginning of the architecture. So now it's kind of easy for us. It's kind of like streaming and versus downloading. Fortunately, in our case, we kind of almost don't care, because in the short format component, for us, it's all about access. And from a monetization perspective, once people understand that there's no barriers to access, then I won't say the sky's the limit, but they're much more amenable to coming to the table and talking about it.
Well, one thing that we did actually, that we've been stumbling upon or were stumbling upon in the past, was advertisers worrying about, how do I get my ad before the video? How do I get this ad before the video? If the video's already been compressed, it's going to cost me a ton of money to uncompress it, and yada, 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 and all this drama. And one thing that Stephen and I love to go in and tell people is, why y'all stressing? You can all have your own show. For what it costs you to go out, that's my background. I come from the wonderful world of Hollywood and New York and doing commercials and music videos, and what the budgets we used to have on doing this stuff was crazy. I'm like, God, I could give you a year of shows right now for what you're spending on advertising for that one campaign. We can go out and do an entire whole year series of shows, non-union, of course. But one of our shows on Podcast Go is a drinking channel, how to make the perfect cocktail, not just cocktails, because I don't want everyone walking around wasted and blaming Podcast Go, but it's everything from cocktails to health drinks, and we can syndicate within our own network, which is great for health drinks on Go Health and so on and so forth. But I'm going to use cocktails as an example from a revenue stream. Is Stephen and I were speaking at Low Worldwide, and we had a lot of advertisers there who were kind of supporting their clients, or actually even companies. A few of them were liquor companies. So we pulled up Podcast Go Drink and said, of course we're not making any money right now on Go Drink yet, but that would probably come. When they saw the model, they were seeing their products at this bar with the bartender making their drink, and well, there's 10 cane vodka sitting right there. Not only is this good-looking bartender making a delicious mojito, which I know how to make every drink in the book right now. I'm kind of excited about that. But it's product placement at its highest degree. So the advertisers were watching this going, oh, well, we don't have to worry about, first of all, you can't if you're a liquor company, you can't advertise on television. You not only can't advertise on cable at certain weird hours, but damn, you can have your own show. So that rung huge with them. So now we have a whole slew of new drinking shows coming up with, again, because we're tech support at the end, if you're on your mobile device, you have, not only you're seeing it in the video, but because we are telling you what's in that video from a content ingredient perspective, at least, I don't know about you guys, but I would be like, 10 cane vodka? Okay, 10 cane vodka. Ocean spray cranberry juice? Okay, boom. So the advertisers are really, really loving that. That's just something that it was just a no-brainer for us. It just made sense. It's product placement at its absolute highest degree. So that's another way.
Great. Chris, what are you seeing sort of for?
I certainly echo advertising. It will seem to be here forever.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly the internet gives flexibility and it does a number of good things. It gets you more targeted, has the potential to get you more targeted audiences, has the potential to get you better information and stats and a better way to reach that audience. But I think the challenges are, how do creatives take advantage of that? They now suddenly have, it's not just, here's the campaign and we're just going to buy a bunch of upfronts and that's that. They now got to get creative and thinking about how they're going to take advantage of those opportunities by making their own podcast shows, for example, running pre-rolled ads or any sponsoring skins on maybe AOL Top 11. So there's a lot of more creativity and more work, I think, on the advertisers.
Are there any advertisers in the audience? None. Okay. I was wondering if someone had some interesting war stories to share with us. I guess we have talked about sort of what all the potential is and what we can do with this wonderful personalized video. What are some of the concrete challenges that each of you are facing in terms of realizing this potential? It's all well and good, and we can talk about all the things that we do well, but where are some of the bumps happening, and what are some of the challenges?
So what don't we do well?
Well, not necessarily what you don't do well. Now, what are some of the bumps that you're seeing? And it might even just be, things that you figured out, but people need to think about in terms of going down this path in personalized video? Mihai, why don't you start with that?
Well, you live in a wonderful country here. Well, everybody speaks the same language. Everybody watches almost the same shows and has the same subscriptions, and it's a huge market by itself. Europe is a fantastic market, and the euro is 20% higher. This is, I don't know if it's so good for us.
That's going to change.
That's
going to change.
The problem, exactly. But the problem is that it's 300 million people speaking almost everyone a different language. And when you go to each country and you compare France to UK, to Germany, to Italy, to Spain, you find that basically you have very different infrastructure, very different operators, very different content owners, and very different watching behaviors. And that's the very difficult thing to deal with. And well, we started that a couple of years ago, but it's still highly difficult to see how people behave differently in every country. I told you about France, where there's a widespread of really high broadband. It's not the case in Germany at all, surprisingly. But it's the case in Italy, where you have Fast Web, who has fiber channel directed to the home, and it's one of the biggest ISPs there. So there you can do a lot of things. So infrastructure is different, so we have to adapt not only our technologies, but also our content to those specific countries. And then when it comes to content, basically everybody wants to watch Harry Potter whenever it's out. But we have to deal with Harry Potter, with the Warner in France, with the Warner in UK, with Warner in Italy, and so on and so on. And the encoding is different, and the subtitles are different. And then you say, okay, I'm done with the major studios because there are only 7 out of there. But then it comes with local content. Oh, yeah, because French people have their own production, their own movies, their own documentaries, and so on. So the difficulty is not like here, where you deal with a couple of big brands which are out there, and if you sign a deal in New York, it's going to work also in San Francisco. Whatever we sign in with local content owners in Paris doesn't work in Munich or in Milan. So I think those are the big challenges. And finally, trying to bring that to the end user in a most transparent manner, that's what we face with right now.
Aaron.
I think there are challenges in licensing still, and just how content owners coming to grips with the world that we're seeing, the world that's, as we say, where you want it, when you want it, all of that. We watched music sort of grow up with this with Napster, and people have seen that, and I think they've allowed things like YouTube to flourish. There's been a lot of discussion with content owners with YouTube, what has to be taken down, et cetera, but we all know there's plenty of content on there that's being produced by users that don't own that content. So it'll be curious to see if that can accelerate. I'm not sure if it's going faster or not, because it's tough to know but there's lots of experimentation. So I think the IP issues in this brave new world is going to be one of the challenges. Another one I think has to do with privacy, and people want relevance, and advertisers want relevance. That's part of their game, is all about the targeting and get the right audiences. And sort of the fine balance between that, the information that you want to be used by these companies to deliver relevance back to you, but the information that you don't want to be used for other areas. And I think that's something that's going to continue to evolve. We watched the AOL issue, I guess it was last week or 2 weeks ago, with 650,000 search terms that were released and anonymized. I mean, you could sleuth them to figure out if somebody, I think that was the big thing that broke when they figured out a woman in Georgia or something. But the interesting thing is that the whole discussion died down fairly fast. I think that it could have been a larger issue for a longer period of time, which I think is showing that we all understand a bit of that is sort of getting out there. And so I think that's one of the challenges that still exists.
Stephen?
I don't know, I guess for Podcast Go, probably one of our biggest challenges is really, we have so many people. American marketing we're very buzzword driven and vernacular driven. And many days when we're having meetings, people will say things, well, is podcasting, and is it here to stay? Is it a flash in the pan? Is it something that we're buzzing on? And probably one of our biggest challenges is getting people to understand that the word podcast, video podcast, whatever you call it, for us anyway, it's really short format philosophy. It's providing people with, whether it's on television, whether it's on a cell phone, whether it's on a video iPod, is really inconsequential. It's just a short format component. I know when I look at the Digital Hollywood, sheet for this conference, there's so many words out there. I don't even know what they are. There was like a whole paragraph of different buzzwords, and I was like, I don't even know what those are. I feel embarrassed. Should I get my dictionary out? So for us, many of the larger corporations, they still look at video podcasting as something that's a big if. It's like the big if, because they want numbers. They want to hear that 80 million people download it every 4 seconds. And we try and get people to turn out of the numbers are important, let's face it. We understand advertisers need to understand what their reach is. At the same time, we want to get people more educated on the philosophy behind the short format. Historically, television, it's never going to die. That television is here to stay. It's really just offering a new component. For us, we'd love for Podcast Go to be a channel on television.
Yeah.
Because it's short format. Forget mobility. Forget whether you call it, Podcast Go or Mobile to Go. Whatever the word is, it's really offering short format infotainment wherever it may exist. We want to be on the back of the Lincoln Navigators, so that children can go to Go Travel or Go Kids or Go Teens, and it has nothing to do with a cell phone. It's short format infotainment, and getting people out of that video podcasting word and all the blogs and, is this a blog? Is it not a blog? What is a blog? I don't really know. What's the difference? So our biggest challenge is getting people out of the focus of a vernacular, and is it just a flash in the pan, or what is the real credence behind this philosophy? And that's much more important than what you actually call it.
And Chris?
So I would echo what Darren said around user privacy and content IP/licensing. Those will be challenges. I think also talking with IT groups a lot, we see a challenge of we have customers that build out wonderful experiences around digital media that maybe have search and personalization in. They have maybe some social aspects of it in, user-generated content. Their playback experience looks really good. They're pushing ads to it. They're monetizing the content, and then it's great on the web. How do I extend that to the desktop? How do I extend that to mobile? How do I extend it to set-top boxes? So I think another common challenge that the industry will have is how do we get to one common infrastructure on the back end that allows you to hit all these endpoints?
Okay, great. So I'm going to wrap it up quickly, but before we do, I would like for each of you to tell me, what are we going to be talking about in a year about personalized video that we're not talking about today? What will that look like? And then, as a consumer, let's all put on consumer hats. What is your wish list? What would you love to see? It could be a device, it could be a website, it could be a portal, but what would you love to see there so that you could have a wonderful personalized experience? And I'll start with you, the end, Chris. We'll work our way backwards.
Boy, my wish list would be, we're talking about Flash video next show here. Obviously biased interest there. But certainly we think that we do have an opportunity and a great platform to do some of this ability to have a common infrastructure and deliver differentiated user experiences. And we're starting to see some of that from an Adobe and Flash perspective. We're starting to see some of that take off, and we'd really like to continue to work with you guys to help you grow out your customized media experiences. I think maybe in a year from now, I think one of the buzzwords that may creep up more is this whole concept of home media servers. And how do we extend, not just the website serving out video, but I have my now home media server, maybe it's hooked into my router, and it's broadcasting my movies and my personal media, and maybe even handling my real-time communications off from my living room or off from my ADSL router.
Hopefully that's all under one bill, because I can't all these bills coming in with everything.
Steven?
Well, the great thing about a partnership with Andrea and I is I'm going to steal something that she mentioned a couple of minutes ago from a wish list. Asia is so amazing with the synergy of their cell networks and their infrastructure. if we had that in North America, I don't know what we would do with ourselves. It would be so nice if the cell phone companies and all of these people that that we need and want were more architecturally and technology synergistic amongst each other. Everyone's out there fighting to, get their own content and sell that content. I think that for us, a wish list would be that there was a common engine that people could decide upon.
Because I'm sick of jumping from plan to plan to plan to get a different thing.
And we have a lot of catching up to do, from my perspective. From the Asian markets are to me very fascinating. The number of people that are downloading and viewing information on cell phones, and not big ones, even very small ones, makes us look like we're in kindergarten. And so my wish list is that we catch up from that respect of how to use something that is here to stay, and because it's the market, the companies are driving how we're using them. And there are times where it should be vice versa. This is a universal piece of equipment and a universal philosophy. It'd be nice if we were able to use it universally.
My wish list actually with Steven is, because he's the business guy, that's mine's, I guess, more personal, again, consumer related. I want to be able to figure out how to cure something instead of running to a doctor, or I want to be able to download a quick video on what if I get diagnosed with breast cancer? What if someone that you care about does? What if I'm in AA and I'm freaking out because there's no meetings around, and I need to just download that one little bit of hope to get me through? What if I'm a teenage girl that just found out she was pregnant and I'm stuck in my room and what am I going to do? Podcast Go has its own wish list every day. Steve and I talk about this. These are just personal goals, again, for personalized video that make it autonomous, safe, and we really, ultimately, my goal, my personal wish list with Podcast Go is, I want to change the face of education in general. I want people to be able to know that there's another way to learn out there than just reading a bunch of other people's websites, and maybe you're getting the wrong information.
Darren.
In 1 year, I think is how you said first, those are great things to solve. In 1 year, I'd like to see IPTV really be a success. I'd like to see one of these companies come out and I mean that for the consumer side. So to really see a differentiated experience in the living room, and I think that'll push the connected home concept. Most of the companies that are providing it have a triple play effect. So one of those be successful from a consumer standpoint, where you say it really starts to push the other companies to come to the table and give us all a better experience for entertainment in the living room. And I think that's related to what Chris said on the architecture side, because I think if it's IP, that's sort of the backbone to that, which we know, which gets us close to that net neutrality discussion. But if it's out there, I think it creates that much more sort of healthy competition for consumers to get some of the best experiences. And it may not be from the media companies or the people delivering media that we know of today. So the MSOs, the giant companies there, and the giant telcos. I think there's an opportunity for other companies that may be more in the CE space or in the connected home space that could deliver great experiences because it's got that sort of neutral IP background. So we talk about Web 2.0 and all of that, but the idea that you could go to an interface and say, I have Comcast or I have DirecTV, I have eMusic for my music service, I have so-and-so, and be able to deliver an interface for all of your connected stuff that uses the web and brings it down. I think those are real opportunities. Right now, it's still very proprietary. People have the pipes, and so this is what they deliver. You get a little frustrated with it, and you have to jump to another big subscription plan to do something else. So down the road, I'd love to see that, and I'd like to see the old passport concept that Microsoft had come to life, where it would actually sit with you. So you could have it, and it could be used anywhere, and it would deliver relevance back to you, and you could control the privacy elements of it and what's meaningful in it. And that's sort of a long-term dream.
Okay, great. Mihai.
A couple of years ago, we've seen an explosion in what we call in Europe SMS, which is text messaging and ringtones and stuff like that. And everybody in the United States was saying, that's such a European thing or maybe Asian thing. I think last month there was 1 billion text messages exchanged via mobile phones in the US, which is absolutely amazing. And ringtones are starting to be everywhere also in the US, huge business model. So it appears that a couple of things are maybe sometimes coming from Asia directly, but very often they go through Europe. They get more mature, more occidentalized, I would say, and then come finally to the US. And I think IPTV is one of those things that are going to come here very, very quickly, probably in the next year. And if you want to see how it's going to be in 1 year from now in the US, maybe have a look at what's happening in France and Finland and so on. And this is what's going to happen. And it's very interesting because it's really an openness of the networks.
I was just going to say it's different because you actually have smaller companies doing innovative IPTV. For us here, we have the giant.
Well, we have also France Telecom, which
We have
is
bureaucracy.
That's true, yeah, France Telecom.
and Deutsche Telekom and things like that. So now on my wish list, I have a real big item on my wish list, which is the remote control. Have you had a look at your remote control? I think today there are many more keys on your remote control than on your PC keyboard. And the good thing is that you have only one keyboard, but you have 10 remote controls, right? So my really wish list is one single remote control with 3 buttons: power, volume, and the super channel.
I'm so with you on that.
That's it. That's what I want.
Great. I'd like to open up quickly to some questions from the audience. Any questions? I know everybody's probably petered out a bit end of the day. Yes, David.
Yes, Chris, in terms of the Flash product, there's a lot of individual software providers who are creating various types of 2.0 type of functionality. Do you see yourself replicating that and creating your own suite of services? It sounds like you may have already, or do you simply try to integrate those others into the Flash product?
And we're really looking to empower those companies, both the startups with the new fancy web TV or Web 2.0 apps, as well as the traditional companies, media and media and entertainment customers, advertisers, agencies. Really looking to provide them with the underlying backbone to build out those engaging experiences and brand them, themselves.
Another question? Yes.
In another session, they're talking about the IPTV and the last mile. And I found a very interesting overlap between what you were saying, between what somebody was saying earlier with regard to the ability to have your content be delivered across multiple end-user devices. And I'd like to hear your take on the last mile issue. How do you get a delivery, the same as you have on your computer to your handheld device, or worse, the hardest of all, to the television?
Well, I can start with that. It depends if you're on cable or on a ADSL. If it's cable, you better have a better or the last generation cable infrastructure, which is fiber, and fiber as close as possible to the user's home. If it's ADSL, you have to upgrade what we call the DSLAMs, which are actually the concentrated boxes, which are maybe in each neighborhood. And the problem in that infrastructure is there's a clogging sometimes happening there. But with new technologies now, operators are able to really guarantee a 15 or 20 megabit access permanent on ADSL without any glitch for all households, which means that 20 megabits, that's huge. That's almost the wireless as a LAN. So with that kind of connectivity, you of course can do high definition television, high definition video on demand, and so on, and also bundle a lot of services at the same time. Now, what those operators are preparing is an evolution of their network towards fiber or XDSL, VXDSL, which is technically able to reach speeds superior to 100 megabits per second on your normal phone line. And the fiber, which is able to do between 100 and 1 gigabit, 100 megabits and 1 gigabit. And in Japan right now, they implemented already a neighborhood with 1 gigabit access direct to the home, with some fiber which is flexible. You know, the fiber you cannot twist it, and it's not very flexible, otherwise it breaks. Now they have some very flexible fiber, so it goes really directly to your home through the walls, and you have a real 1 gigabit access at home. So I think, and that's what we see in Europe, it's not anymore a problem at the last mile. It's a problem of investments and evolution, but technology is there, and it's about to be upgraded. Now, I think the question of the next year panel will be, what are you going to do with 1 gigabit at home? That's it.
I just want to chime in the sense that I think the consumer really doesn't care what kind of fiber or cable comes into the home. I think it's what it empowers and what it does. And I know there are two different approaches. Verizon has a different one than AT&T about how they're going after this. But the big difference with IPTV from the perspective that I look at it and for the consumer's interface is that it provides a back channel to the provider of the content. So in the cable land, it's the head end and even back to the server. And that back channel can be almost real time. So then you can get closer to a web type experience. So you click on a movie for on demand, you decide it costs $4.99, maybe you don't want it, you can immediately surface 5 other movie choices on that page that didn't have to be necessarily hardwired. It could have been based on your own preferences in the past, as opposed to in a cable environment, it has to be one size fits all for everybody. So all of those connections have to be, so the UI is more flexible, and the real time, I think, can create a rich experience on the TV. And in the end, we don't, the shape of that cable or plug or whatever, it's really what's going to be different when you're sitting there in front of the TV.
We have time for one last question. Yes.
Hi, this question's for Andrea. Just curious, there's a lot of podcast networks out there. What makes Podcast Go different? And why should I log on to Podcast Go as opposed to some of the other options?
We're kind of in our own space. There aren't a lot of options. I mean, a lot of companies right now do have, with the exception of MySpace, YouTube, of course, we do give a very personalized experience. You can download that, first 10 steps to breast cancer. You can download, I'm having a cocktail party. You can download, where do I go shopping in New York, LA, eventually the world. We are in the infantile stages right now, which we are not lying, we're not misleading anyone when we say that. We're creating content for the web specifically from the ground up. We are not just taking any content, any time, and sticking it. We're not hosts for just anybody. Not anyone can upload to our servers with their random videos. And because we do have tech support at the end, I think that helps when you're on the go. I live in Manhattan, and like I said, with Podcast Go Cook, a really perfect example. If I want to cook something and I've downloaded it, again, the downloads versus streaming, for me, it makes sense to download into my personal device, because if I'm running around the city and I'm like, oh God, I got to run to Whole Foods, for example, I can go into Whole Foods and go to my Go Cook channel and be like, oh, I want to make that beef tenderloin, and what do I need? What are the ingredients I need to do with that beautiful dinner that they made? And just, it gives you, again, that personalized experience where everything is bloop, right there. And you just pull it off the shelves, pay for it, go home, and rock out a great dinner.
Okay, great. I want to thank all our panelists. I want to thank our audience for sticking around. There's one more session. Please do support the other speakers as well. And thank you guys for attending. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.